record it. If you go to your Google Classroom and follow along with me on the instructions, I have a few updates for you. Yesterday we got an email that said that the internet they're trying to get all the computers at school ready to get on the internet. So anything that's been connected to the network, they are cleaning it and restarting it and getting it registered to the network, I guess. We're still at home this week. I know it looks like I'm in my classroom, but it's just because I changed up my background to look like my classroom. And so we're going to be at home this week, and then I don't know, usually they tell us on Thursday or Friday whether we're going back the following week or not. So I know that they're working on cleaning that, but they have to do that with every computer in the entire district. So I feel like that's going to take them a while. I don't know. I do know, I do have a little bit of good news on the gradebook portal front. We got an email today, this morning, that the portal is tentatively back up. It's not official that we can work on it yet. They said don't put any grades, if you access it, don't enter anything, but they've got like 3 companies working on it. And so maybe if we all cross our fingers at the same time and click our heels 3 times, maybe they'll be working later in the week. They did say that once it's stable, that they would give us something like 2 days to put in grades for the first semester, make sure everything's all correct, double check everything, make sure nothing got deleted or corrupted or anything like that. And so hopefully later in the week, we'll have access to the gradebook and the portal. If you don't have access to the portal, then I probably don't have access to the gradebook at the same time. So that's good news. Is there anything else on updates? I try to update you on what I know about those sorts of things, but if there's something else that I could be updating you on, I would be glad to do it. I don't know what it could be, but if you have something, you could put it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask me. I could try to find out how things are going. I imagine that when the teachers go back to campus, hybrid will start back up again. So I don't know, maybe that will be next week or April, I don't know. I feel like my big lesson with this whole situation is just roll with the punches, right? Just figure it out as you go. I do want to go over the sonnets from last week's assignment, the 5 that I asked for you to determine the type. This whole last week was about figuring out 3 different types of sonnets. There are, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 different types of sonnets, but some of them are pretty rare. The 3 that we studied this week are the main 3 that we see popping up. So I want to go over those. But first, let me talk about this week's assignments because it's a little different this week. This week, I know last week we were talking a little bit about maybe meeting a little bit on Wednesdays, or at least having the like some time to come in and maybe do like extra practices or help people with their assignments or go over something. So I thought about that since last Wednesday, and I think that would be a really good idea. So I incorporated that into our lesson this week so that people who might want to come in for some extra time working on sonnets this week could come in on Wednesday. So I'm going to have class on Wednesday the same time. It's not required to come to class on Wednesday. I'm just going to be talking more about sonnets. Maybe we'll do a couple more examples, or maybe we'll look at the homework for this week, like the assignment for this week a little bit, help people get started on that. So there is a quiz on sonnets this week, and it's on AP style multiple choice questions. So let's go down here and I'll show you some of the things that I have for you. Obviously, I put the formatives in there. So assignment number 1 this week is to complete an explication of 2 sonnets, and that's on a Jamboard just like this last week's assignment was. I think it's pretty handy. There's 2 new sonnets, and this time I want you to go beyond just saying what type of sonnet it is and do a regular 1, 2, 3 analysis. So at this point now, we should be using what we know about the structure of sonnets and completing an entire explication, or annotate it for all of the points. And I'm going to go through some of the sonnets from the assignment that you turned in. I think it was due earlier today. I'm going to go through that a little bit and explain the 1, 2, 3 and go through that whole process. But there's 2 new sonnets on here on these other slides. So you can go through and follow the directions on those. Again, if you want to, you can come to class on Wednesday and we'll probably delve into those a little bit. I'll probably do a little preliminary work with you to help you get started on them. Maybe it's a little rusty, the 1, 2, 3, we'll go through that, that kind of thing. So that's assignment number 1. That one is for a grade, and I think the due date, I made it Friday the 15th. The reason that I did that is because I wanted to make sure that there was time on Wednesday in case you wanted to come and get a little bit of extra sonnet practice in. You would still have time to do that assignment. But there is also a quiz on sonnets on AP Classroom. So there are 2 sonnets on that quiz, and the assignment helps you prepare for that. And so will our little support time on Wednesday. So there are 2 sonnets, there are 17 questions, and you'll have 30 minutes to do them on the AP Classroom. So they're going to be different than any of the other sonnets that we have done in this little 2-week unit. So I made that not due until, is that Sunday? Sunday night. So all the other stuff is just preparation so that you can be as prepared as possible for that. I also made, besides the assignment that's due and the quiz, I also made a little tab here for additional support. So if you want to, you can come on Wednesday for some more sonnet talk, and I'll do a few run-throughs. And also there are some videos that I made available to you on AP Classroom that can help you with the sonnet also. So all that, this is optional. So I always make it pretty clear, this is for a grade or this is optional. So if there's not a due date, then it's pretty much optional. But in case you'd rather hear somebody else talk about sonnets besides me, then there are some good videos on these 2 sonnets that some other teachers will go over for you on AP Classroom. So I want to make sure that you can do the best job possible when you go to do that quiz on sonnets and practice that multiple choice. So I'm trying to give you like the ultimate sonnet experience. So that sort of outlines stuff for this week. I'd like to go back to the 2 assignments that you had for, well, besides your book talk. Some people, I'm gonna check off to see if everybody signed up for their book talk, but I'll do that later today. If you have not signed up for your book talk, you should go back to last week and do that on the link that's there so that we can meet up and talk about your book. Some people have their appointment today. Some people have it later in the week, and there are some appointments, I think, through Wednesday next week. They're all like from 4 o'clock until 5:30 or something like that in the evening. So you can look on that schedule and see if those times don't work with your schedule, you can just contact me and we'll work something out. But let's go to the chart that you did on the 3 types of sonnets. I think you can open yours up or you can look at it. I don't think you can. I think I have ownership of it now and you can't write on it anymore. But the first assignment last week was to figure out the difference between English sonnets, Italian sonnets, and Spenserian sonnets. And hopefully you found out that there's a lot of overlap, right? There are some similarities among all 3 types. And that would basically be the number of lines, right? And the metrical pattern. There's the same iambic pentameter in all three. So I'm going to illustrate some of these on a few of the poems that you looked at on the other homework assignment in a minute. But the difference lies in the structure of the poem sections, the shift, and the structure of ideas. I've seen sonnets show up on the exam more than any other type of closed form poetry. Sometimes they have free verse on there, more modern pieces, but if they put an older sonnet, an older poem, it is like 60% of the time going to be a sonnet. So it's good for us to get used to looking at sonnets and figuring them out. This is going to be a good tool for you as you work the rest of the week also, just to remember the structure of the different types of poetry, the types of sonnets. So I'll look at those maybe tonight or tomorrow and get those back to you. All right, so let's take a look at the other part of the homework. Oh, wait, I didn't need to click on that. This one here. I want to go through and talk about 3 of the different sonnets and give you a little bit of what I want you to do with this week's sonnets. There's 2 sonnets that I want you to do for this week's assignment. And I kind of want to demonstrate that using the ones from last week because you've already looked at these. So you're at least somewhat familiar with them. This first one, maybe I'll just go through them first and talk about what type each one is, just so you could see if you got your assignment right. This first one is a Shakespearean sonnet, and the dead giveaway for a Shakespearean sonnet is the couplet at the end. So you can usually go to the end of the sonnet, and if the last 2 lines rhyme, let me get the pen out here. If the last 2 lines rhyme with one another, then that will be a dead giveaway that it's either Shakespearean or it could be Spenserian. But 9 times out of 10, it will be Shakespearean. There's way more Shakespearean sonnets than there are Spenserian sonnets. After that, you can notice that the poem is broken into 3 quatrains, right? I'm going to do my best with this little pen. I know it's tough, and probably your homework looks like that too. It's okay. We're not here to draw straight lines. This isn't straight line class, right? So another feature of the Shakespearean sonnet, let me go ahead and type Shakespearean up here. Or sometimes we call it the English sonnet. There. Is that it's broken up in a way that helps us to understand the poem. So not only does it have like 4 chunks to it, there's also a progression of ideas. And that's why I asked you that on that chart. So a poem like this, let me read through it and then we'll talk about what makes it Shakespearean and how we can start to analyze it using the 1, 2, 3. So it says, how like a winter hath my absence been from thee, the pleasure of the fleeting year. What freezings have I felt, what dark days seen, what old December's bareness everywhere. And yet this time removed was summer's time, the teeming autumn big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burden of the prime like widowed wombs after their lord's decease. Yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hope of orphans and unfathered fruit, for summer and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away the very birds are mute, or if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near. I just noticed that last line is gonna bother me. That last line needs to be right here, but you already knew that. Okay, so what makes this Shakespearean or English sonnet is the structure of those quatrains. So quatrain is just a section of 4 lines of a poem. Sometimes the poet will put a gap between the quatrains and sometimes they won't. But we need to understand that even if there's not a gap, there is sort of an idea gap that happens between them. So what happens right here is, can you pick a color? Oh, good, I'll pick a different color. What happens right here is in quatrain 1 is there's an idea that's set forth. It's an image, it's a concept, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's an expression. In this case, the person is using a simile, right? So I would probably, in my 1, 2, 3 analysis, I would mark the simile. This is like a step 2 thing, right? How like a winter hath my absence been from thee. Now we have to remember that old time language, thee means you. And that's step 1, right? Step 1 of the analysis is go through and look up all the words you don't know, figure out all the things that are kind of vague or hazy as you read it. Step 2 is to employ all of the figurative language. So this person is saying, the speaker's saying, my absence from you has been like winter. Well, I can make a few inferences from that. If my absence from somebody is like winter, it's cold, it's harsh, it's painful, it's isolating. I could start thinking of all the things that make it like winter. It's not warm and cozy and friendly and lovey and all those things. Our absence has been void. It's been dead. Winter is a dead season. So I can make all those assumptions just here in the first 2 lines. What freezings have I felt, what dark days seen? So these are all just reinforcing that simile, right? Even this 4th line, what does old December's bareness everywhere? And so that just completes the first idea in the poem, which is being away from you this time has been like cold death, the cold death of winter. And that's this first idea. So if I was annotating, I would probably put a text box and type all that in, or one of those post-it notes or whatever. Now, what happens next in a Shakespearean sonnet is that the second quatrain, it's not bad, is going to build off of that idea. It's going to shift a little bit, and then it's going to build with a new metaphor, a new idea, a new concept. And we know that it's a shift because we have and yet. Yet, so, but, nor, or, all of those, what do they teach you in middle school? Fanboys. They are called coordinating conjunctions. If you don't want to call them fanboys anymore, they're coordinating conjunctions. Those usually signal a change. And look, there's one right here too at the beginning of the 3rd quatrain. So this sonnet is setting up the idea that we have this concept, there's been an absence between these 2 people that has caused them, to feel cold and separated and dead and frozen. And that's going to give way to the second idea. And yet this time removed was summer's time. Yet tells me, let's go in the other direction. So it was summer's time. Now that can get a little bit confusing because they just said that it was winter, but they didn't say that it was winter. They said it was like a winter. So in actuality, it was summertime. It just felt like winter because you were away, is the idea, right? The teeming autumn, big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burden of the prime, like widowed wombs after their lord's decease. Okay, I'm noticing that we're getting a lot of similes. There's a key simile here in the first quatrain, and there's a key simile here in the second one. The summer is not the simile because it is actually literally summer. But the speaker is saying, even though it was warm outside and summer was happening, it felt like winter to me because we were apart from one another. And we were building toward some sort of like the harvest, right? When do you harvest? Right before winter. So the idea is that there's this feeling of expectation. There's even this womb that is emptied into the winter, into that dark coldness. So summer is going to give way to this autumn. And so it continues the idea of them being removed. We have removed right here, right? So I would mark all these things on my 1, 2, 3, and then I would also make notes on them. I just don't have time to talk and type them. So hopefully my discussion takes the place of the notes that I would put on there. Okay, then I have another yet. So I'm moving to the third quatrain. That's pretty good too. I'm doing better than I thought I would with this drawing tool. Yet, this abundant issue. Now, issue, you have to look that up. If I was doing a 1, 2, 3, I would have to stop and look that up. I know what an issue is, an issue of like a magazine, right? Or I will issue you your uniform to give something out. But the way issue is being used here, it seems weird. And whenever that happens in step 1 of a 1, 2, 3 analysis, I have to look up the word because there could be a meaning to the word that I don't know. Maybe it's old meaning, or, this is Shakespeare. We're talking about, the 16th century. So there could be a meaning that I'm unaware of. In this case, issue means a child. To issue forth from the womb is to give birth to a child. So sometimes the word issue is synonymous with a child. We don't really use that today unless it's, I don't know, super formal or something like that. And yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hope of orphans and unfathered fruit. This abundant issue is probably the poem itself, right? This poem, I'm giving birth to it, but it's empty because you're not here, and I don't really have the motivation and the romance and the love behind it to make it progress. But hope of orphans and unfathered fruit, for summer and its pleasures wait on thee. I can't really enjoy the time right now because even though it's summer and the fruit trees are giving forth and everybody usually enjoys summer more than they enjoy winter, I can't enjoy it. Why? Because you are away. Do we have a simile in each quatrain? No. But we do have this personification, the summer and his pleasures wait on thee. The summer is being personified as a man. And we have even the birds are silent. So the idea of absence is carried through all 3 sections of the poem, but each section of the poem does it differently. And so we can see that clearly lined up with the quatrains. Now, what about this little guy down here? What about this couplet? Or if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near. So the couplet is usually a summary of the idea of the poem. So that means when I'm looking at a Shakespearean or an English sonnet, if I can get this and I can get this, then the middle part should echo that. That's a good tool to use if you need to save time on a test, like the AP exam or a quiz or what have you. If I can work this quatrain, kind of skim through this to see how it shifts and how that structure is working, and then figure out the couplet, then I have a pretty good idea of what that poem is about. In this case, the couplet is telling me a few things. It's reversing. So that's like the third reversal, 1, 2, 3 in the poem. Or if they sing, because in the previous quatrain it said that they were mute, if they sing, it is dull. It's not summer chirping that is excited and full of life. It's a dull chirping that just sort of talks about how the winter is coming along. So this person, the speaker here, is depressed, can't enjoy the summer because the person that they are in love with or that has their heart in one way or another is away from them. So it just feels like winter to them. And that's supposed to demonstrate that emotion. Now, how can I get that to stage 3 in the 1, 2, 3 analysis? Well, in stage 3, I need to come up with a theme. So I know what the speaker's saying. I can see that the speaker has this sadness because of this absence. But I need to broaden that out in the theme and make it applicable to everybody. So it's not just about these people, it's about everyone. So I could say something like, I want to try the post-it note. Let me see. Does it put it right on the page? I think it will. I'm going to make it pink. So a theme for this could be something like, now I'm tempted to put something like absence makes the heart grow fonder or something that's really kind of a cliche, and you want to avoid that because, everybody's going to say that about the poem, and it's also a little, not deep. So I'm going to say something like theme. When two people who love each other are apart. Now, is it romantic love necessarily? Not necessarily. I mean, I could see where it definitely could be, but I don't think it necessarily is. I could feel isolated and cold when my parents are far away or when my sister or my brother's far away, right? Um, Sorry, they're making me wear my glasses for a month instead of my contacts because I have been diagnosed with fatigued eyes from the computer, I guess. So these glasses work a little differently. When two people who love each other are apart, um, the absence can seem cold and lonely. That's kind of basic, but that's what I want to get to. And that's true for human nature. That's true for all humans, not just the people that are in this poem. So it can function as a theme. I want to see how the sticky note works. Oh, okay. How do you get away from it? Oh, okay. Then do you just click on it to bring it up or what? Oh, you can resize it. I'm sure you guys already figured this out on your homework. Oh, I like how it kind of goes behind the other items. Okay. So that's just kind of like a basic 1, 2, 3 using what we know about the Shakespearean sonnet. All right. Should we go through and look at the other poems that we had in this set a little bit? See what you came up with. What do y'all think? Okay. The second one is a Spenserian sonnet. I like this one a lot. It's kind of a funny poem. When you read it, it's weird that old poems, like that are hundreds of years old, can still have humor to them because we usually think of old stuff as serious, I think. And Spenser and Shakespeare and all those guys, we think of them as sort of lofty writers and so on. But this Spenserian sonnet is set up pretty much just like a Shakespearean sonnet. You can see, where's my pen? You can see the couplet down here. You can see the quatrain divisions. There's a question at the end of each one of these quatrains in this poem, right? So when you break it up into those quatrains, you can start to see more structure than you originally saw when you were first reading it. So let me read it and we'll talk a little bit about Spenserian structure and why this poem is kind of funny. My love is like to ice and I to fire. How comes it then that this her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire, but harder grows the more I her entreat? Or how comes it that my exceeding heat is not delayed by her heart frozen cold, but that I burn much more in boiling sweat and feel my flames augmented manifold? What more miraculous thing may be told that fire, which all thing melts, should harden ice, and ice, which is congealed with senseless cold, should kindle fire by wonderful device? Such is the power of love in gentle mind that it can alter all the course of kind. All right. So what makes this Spencerian is the rhyme scheme, right? The rhyme scheme's different on all three of the sonnets that you looked at. In this case, we have an interlocking rhyme. So we have fire and desire. These would be a, maybe I should just make a, let me change my pen size. That's kind of tough. You can tell that's an A, right? A, B, because great does not rhyme with fire. Now, entreat does not rhyme with great. It rhymes with heat, right? So we have A, B, desire and fire. Great. Entreat will be C, and then heat will be C. And then cold will be D. Oh, maybe he meant for this to be B. Sweat ends with the same as heat. Okay, so here's the problem with sonnets sometimes. Let me just outline this. Better do it in a different color. So sometimes we run into problems with rhyming because either the poet is from an older time where the word was pronounced differently or a different country. These are British writers. So sometimes they also use just sort of like end rhyme, where just the ending part of the words rhyme with each other, right? So this eat sound, right? The t at the end. So you kind of have to give it a little bit of leeway and not be super strict on that rhyming element. But let me go back to my red one. Okay, so then I have sweat. Now, Spencerian sonnet's supposed to go A, B, A, B, B, C. Maybe I messed that up. This is B. That's a funny looking B. B, and then cold is C. Sweat rhymes with the ending part of heat, and so that's going to be B. Manifold rhymes with cold, and then we have C, and then we have D, and then told, device, and ice, D, and then E, E. So it's a lot like a Shakespearean sonnet, except that it has an interlocking rhyme. I think I messed that up, but hopefully yours is a little better that you can look at once I return it to you. All right, so what is this poem saying? If I was doing a 1, 2, 3 analysis on this poem, this first quatrain sets up an idea. And the idea is that this poor speaker, he says, I am on fire for this woman. I know because they're using the pronoun here, her. My love, now love here is a person, not love the concept. So he's saying, my love, or Janet, whatever her name is like ice. And I'm like fire. And so that's to sort of describe their feelings for each other. She does not give him the time of day. She doesn't like him, she rejects him, and he's just like passionate about her. So we then can say there's a little bit of a metaphor comparing passionate emotions to fire and indifferent cold emotions to ice. And there's a little bit of physics in play here also in this poem, right? So he says, this person that I love is like ice. They don't return any of my affection. She's cold. You know, I don't understand how comes it then that her cold so great is not dissolved through my so hot desire, because that would happen in physics. If I had a flame and a block of ice, the flame would melt the ice. So why is it that my passion can't like break through her coldness and bring her over to my side so that we can, you know, get together? he doesn't understand that. Why can't my passion override her coldness? Because in physics, that's what happens. Instead, what happens is her ice grows more firm. The more I go after her, the colder she is to me. Well, anybody who's been through a middle school romance understands how that works, right? So he says, I don't understand. And so the question marks start to demonstrate that urgent kind of like confusion. I don't understand. Why can't my passionate nature and my romantic self, why can't I break through that coldness of hers? Or, okay, there's another shifting word, right? We talked about that. Or at the beginning of this second quatrain. Or how comes it that my exceeding heat is not delayed by her heart frozen cold? This is the opposite, right? So that's where we see the little mini shift between the quatrains. Or why is it that her coldness isn't diminishing my passion for her? Because you would think that if I was super passionate about this woman and she was completely disgusted by me and cold, that I would get turned off by that, but I'm not. It just makes me want her even more, right? But that I burn much more in boiling sweat and feel my flames augmented manifold. Hopefully you looked up augmented manifold. Or if you were doing a 1, 2, 3, you would do that in the first reading, right? Why is it that it's like double? Every time she just turns her shoulder on me and ignores me and sticks her nose up in the air, oh, I want her all the more. I don't understand, right? And so that's a flip in that idea. Now there's going to be another flip in quatrain 3. What more miraculous thing may be told that fire, which all thing melts, should harden ice? This is miraculous because it goes against the laws of physics, right? It goes against the ideas that we think. Fire is supposed to melt ice, not harden it. So love is a miraculous thing that goes against the laws of physics. And on the other side, ice, which is congealed with senseless cold, should kindle fire by wonderful device. So this quatrain is about the mystery of love that defies even the physics that we know to be true. And then I have that couplet at the end, which in a Spenserian sonnet does pretty much the same thing as it does in a Shakespearean sonnet. And that is sort of a final thought. In this case, it's like a sort of a realization. Such is the power of love in gentle mind that it can alter all the course of kind. Love is such a powerful emotion that it can change even these strict rules of how the world is supposed to work. All right, so then if I was doing step 3, I would think about unrequited love, right? I would think about maybe the idea of the forbidden fruit, playing hard to get. I might play all those things into a theme about this poem. But it's kind of nice to know if you've ever had somebody that you had your eye on that didn't have their eye on you, it's kind of nice to know that they were feeling that same way back 400 years ago. It's just the human condition. Poem 3 and poem 4 are both Italian sonnets. 3, 4, and 5 are all Italian sonnets, or Petrarchan sonnets. And 3 and 4, I'm going to ask you about this week in your formatives. So I'm going to skip over them a little bit and move on to the last one, which is an Italian sonnet. I guess I didn't put that on the I didn't put that on the Spenserian one, and I should have. So I will put it real quick. Just for continuity's sake. So I will give you a clue. Those are both Italian sonnets. And this one is an Italian sonnet too. This one has a very different structure than the Shakespearean, and then there is an Italian sonnet on your quiz. So I want to make sure I talk about that. And then on Wednesday, I can talk about Italian sonnets a little bit more, or I can help you with the 2 poems that you are working on for your assignment this week. etc. Okay, so this poem goes like this. If thou must love me, let it be for naught except love's sake only. Do not say I love her for her smile, her look, her way of speaking gently, for a trick of thought that falls in well with mind, and certes brought a sense of pleasant ease on such a day. For these things in themselves, beloved, may be changed, or changed for thee, and love so wrought may be unwrought so. Neither love me for thine own dear pities wiping my cheeks dry. A creature might forget to weep who bore thy comfort long, and lose thy love thereby. But love me for love's sake, that evermore thou mayst love on through love's eternity. It sounds different. It's got the same number of syllables, right? All sonnets pretty much work in iambic pentameter, which means that they'll have 10 syllables per line. But a Italian sonnet is set up with an octave and a sestet. So you need to know the terms quatrain, couplet, octave, sestet. And if you're writing about a sonnet, you should use those terms. You should say in the first quatrain, in the octave, so that you start to get used to that terminology in pointing toward those directions. Again, it looks like it's all one poem, and of course it is, but there is a break right here. It's usually right on line 9, sometimes in the middle, and sometimes like between line 8 and 9 or 9 and 10. But line 9 signals what we call the volta, the shift. In the other two types of sonnet, you kind of have a little mini volta between each one of the quatrains, and definitely a turn before the final couplet. So sometimes it's called volta, sometimes it's called shift, sometimes it's called the turn. They all mean the same thing. So you'll hear me use them kind of interchangeably. But volta is probably the most impressive way to say that. So here we have the octave, and they call it that because it has 8. An oct is the root for 8 lines. And down here we have the sestet. Ses being the root for 6. All right. There's a special relationship between the octave and the sestet in an Italian sonnet. And that is that the octave will set up a problem, a question, a situation, and the sestet will give a solution, an answer to that. So in this case, the speaker is saying, if you have to love me, let it be except for love's sake. Don't say that you love me because of how I look or the way I move or how bright I might be, because all of those things can change. So the problem is, do you love me because of love or in my internal self, or do you love me because we had a good day, or because our way of thinking falls in line with one another, or because I look a certain way? For these things in themselves, beloved, may be changed or changed for thee, right? Sometimes maybe you've seen relationships where a person changes some aspect of who they are because of who they are falling in love with. And that malleability can sometimes signal an issue or a problem because you're not loving the person, then isn't loving the other one because of who they are if they're pretending. So this first part sets up the idea that some people love, or there's this problem in love of loving someone for superficial elements. And if you can create love out of that, then love can also be unraveled. And then here is the solution to that. If that's the problem, loving somebody for how they look, then the solution is, neither love me for thine own dear pities wiping my cheeks dry. Don't love me out of pity. A creature might forget to weep who bore thy comfort long and lose love thereby. Don't love me because you feel bad for me. I think we've seen relationships like that too. But love me for love's sake. Now that is meant as an echo from the first section up here, right? I like to draw lines when I see things like that and connect them. Right? That's a really big circle. I like to join things up like that. There. But love me for love's sake, that evermore thou mayest love on through love's eternity. If you love me for who I am in my mind, if you love me for the person that I am, then that part isn't going to change. And so the love has a better chance of surviving. Now, another feature of I want to change pens here, of the Italian sonnet that's different is the rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme follows the octave and the sestet. So we have in an Italian sonnet, classically, an A, this is the tough part for me to make them look normal, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. It's repeated again. And then at the shift between the octave and the sestet, also the rhymes change. Sometimes we have C, D, C, D, C, D. I think it's good for you to see me going through these problems with writing these things, because you know I'll be sympathetic when I look at yours. It doesn't have to be perfect. You have to spend all kinds of time making it perfect. There's an alternative. If you did your research, sometimes the ending is C, D, E. C, D, E. So a poet has the option to do either rhyme at the end of an Italian or a Petrarchan sonnet. The reason they call it Petrarchan sonnet is because Petrarch was probably one of the first people to invent a sonnet. Petrarch was part of the Italian Revolution, which took place before, or Renaissance, before the English Renaissance. So Petrarch was living out that Spenserian sonnet, because Petrarch wrote 365 sonnets for a woman named Laura, who never ever talked to him. He wrote her a year's worth of sonnets, and she never paid him any attention, is the literary legend. In any case, I'm hoping that you can see the difference between the three types of sonnets. Are there any questions that you had when you were working on this assignment that I haven't touched on?
Were we just supposed to like say what sonnet it was and why, or just?
Yeah, so I was
Oh,
expecting
okay.
you to kind of mark it, and just so that you know it's Italian or it's Spenserian, that's all you needed to do. What I wanted to do today was kind of like add on the 1, 2, 3 part of it, because that's what you're doing this week with the other poems. So I just kind of wanted to freshen that up a little bit. Yeah. No, you don't have to do, like, for example, on that first one, I kind of lost steam as it went along, but like all the stuff with the 1, 2, 3, I wasn't expecting you to do that on the one that you already turned in. I'm expecting you to do that on the 2 for this week, because we need to get back into that and keep up with those skills. That's a good question.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Anything else that you want me to go over? All right, so there's assignment for this week. There's assignment 1, which is 2 poems to explicate with the 1, 2, 3, and the directions explain that to you on the Jamboard. Remember that you can come in for more sonnet discussion on some other sonnets, or maybe I'll go over a little bit of the basics with those homework sonnets in case you want some help with them. And also there are some videos, but then by the end of the week, before I see you again, please take the quiz on AP Classroom. AP Classroom is sometimes a little touchy. They do a lot of maintenance on that site, so try not to leave it for the last minute. And if you run into trouble, just contact me right away so that I'm aware that there's an issue. It's a little more of a flaky platform than like Formative or something like that. So If you run into trouble, just let me know, okay? All right, well, that concludes today's lesson. I hope that it was interesting to you. I hope that talking about poetry gets you excited about our unit here at the beginning of the year. And I will see you maybe on Wednesday, if not for sure, next Monday. All right. All right, until next time then, you all take care. Stay warm.
Bye, Miss.
Bye.
Bye.